Welcome to Accelerant, everyone. My name is Ryan Laley, and I am your host. It is so wonderful to be back after our first successful Accelerant event last month. We had over 200 participants across 7 platforms. What an amazing feat to pull that off. So if you want to rewatch our last one, you can go to our YouTube channel, just search for Celestial Bodies. And this episode will also be available for replay there as well. So for those of you new to us, Accelerant is 2 hours. In the first hour, we will discuss and debate with our special guest today. And in the second hour, we will dance. And we will dance, let me tell you. A quick word about what we're doing here today. There are audiences across 7 different platforms: Zoom, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, BRCVR and alt space, Sparkleverse, and Multiverse. That is absolutely amazing to me. We're striving to be radically inclusive so everyone on each platform can see everyone on the other platforms at certain times during the event. There might be technical glitches, and if there are, we will do our best to resolve them as quickly as possible. So let's get started off by saying hello to each other. First, everyone on Zoom, wave hello. Good to see everyone. All right, Zoom users, I recommend keeping your screen on speaker view for the best experience here. All right, next, let's have everyone on YouTube say hello by writing it into your chat window. You must be logged into your YouTube account for that to work. All right, hello everyone on YouTube. All right, next we'll go to Twitch. Everyone on Twitch, be sure you're logged in and go ahead and type hello in your chat window. Hello, Twitch. Now, Facebook. Facebook users, go ahead and say hello in your comments. All right, hello, Facebook users. All right, so now let's go into the virtual worlds. There are 3 of them. Let's go ahead and start with Sparkleverse. Everyone there, leave a comment in the group chat now. All right, hello Sparkleverse. All right, and we can't show you the multiverse chat, but we can show you what's going on in the multiverse right now. Is everyone ready to see a virtual Burning Man? And there it is. Brings back memories, right? Lasers and lights at night. Yes, brings back memories. All right. Next, finally, we will say hello to everyone in the virtual reality of BRCVR in AltSpace. Just know that there was a slight delay between their world and ours. Everyone in BRCVR, please share some heart emojis. I think I see some heart emojis. Yep, there they are. There's some heart emojis. Excellent. Great. We are inviting everyone to participate, so this won't just be a sit back and relax and enjoy and watch experience. When you have a question at any time, simply put it into the chat window on the platform that you are using. We have moderators across all the platforms who will be letting me know your questions. If you're in the Multiverse app, open your chat and find our moderator, Lance Miami. Send him your questions. Do it now. He's a chatty Cathy. He loves to chat, aren't you, Lance? If you're in BRCVR and AltSpace, we'll ask you to use the raise your hand emoji. Starry Eyes 00 is a moderator, and he will message you instructions. Also say hello to our newest moderator there, Red Bird Bean. And thank you for joining us, Red Bird Bean. It's nice to have you on board with this. For those on Zoom, just leave your questions in the chat and we will get to them. All right, so I know my mind is blown every time we do this, and it's still blown. It worked last time, so we're excited to make it work yet again, and I hope I didn't jinx it, but I'm knocking on my wood table to make sure I didn't. Well, if anything, we know if something goes wrong, our amazing behind the scenes team will do their best to fix it. Very important, last bit of housekeeping here. If you are participating on multiple platforms, please don't. Seriously, just pick one. If you have more than one platform running, you will experience sound and visual delays. So please just pick one. And if one doesn't seem to be working, you can always switch over to another. There are 7. So It gives you some options there. Finally, we have created Accelerant as a fundraiser for the Burning Man project. Through the next 2 hours, we'll be dropping a link in your platform's chat window. Please consider donating any amount, large or small. All of the monies go directly to the Burning Man project, which is a 501c3. This will ensure that we can get to the ply when it is safe for all of us to do so. All right, now let's get started. Today's theme is what is civic responsibility? We have two amazing guests with us today, and over the next hour, we'll be interviewing them. If you have any questions at any time, please just drop it into your chat window, and our moderators will get the question to me. All right, so let's go ahead and welcome our first guest, Rachel Hundley. Rachel is the Vice Mayor of the City of Sonoma, California, and she is a personal friend of mine and also the reason why I made it to Burning Man in the first place. So hello, Rachel.
Hello, Ryan and everyone. I just don't understand how all these things are connected, but it's amazing to be here, be a part of it.
Yeah, it amazes me constantly, and I'm so grateful that you're here. So I'd like to start, Rachel, by asking you briefly to tell us how you became the Vice Mayor of Sonoma.
Certainly. Well, I'll first give you the short answer, and then I did bring a presentation today. And one of the things that I wanted to put in people's minds is to, one, consider that either you or someone you know should consider running for local office. And a part of that is that the type of person, when you think of who is a politician, that it is time for people to expand what that person looks like. And that is certainly true in my case. But I've been on a city council for 6 years. I was first elected in 2014. I became mayor of the great city of Sonoma in 2017. I was reelected in 2018. And then this year I'm vice mayor of my city.
Excellent.
And so with that, I have, should I bring up my photo display that I have? So it's going to be heavy on the photos. So I hope people are into that sort of thing. Oops. And so I wanted to tell everyone a little bit about who I am as a person and how I ended up doing what I'm doing in hopes that I can encourage a few others to consider too. So I don't know if it's my turn now. Is there anything else on your list before I launch in?
Please go ahead, and I'll ask questions as you start your presentation.
Excellent. So my name is Rachel. I had the privilege of first going to the Burn back in, I think, 2012. I kind of fell into the Spanky's Wine Bar family, and I've been a part of that family ever since. Let's see, I grew up in the Deep South, worked in New York City for a while, and I currently live in California. So getting into going back in time to who I am as a person. So a lot of people, when they think of politicians, they think of someone who's really charismatic and extroverted and probably ambitious in more of a traditional way. But I think that for us introverts out there, there's something that we bring to the table of elected leaders, which is sometimes our thoughtfulness and how we relate to people on a smaller level. So I was pretty creative as a kid. I loved art and music. I did decently well in school, but not perfect. I was like an A/B student. I got my first C in college. And I've always liked to try new things. And then when something was interesting to me, I would tend to put a lot of time and energy into it, but it just kind of depended on what inspired me. And this is a DNA strand made out of vegetables.
I was just going to ask you if that was a double helix made.
The answer is yes.
Did you cook it up afterwards?
Actually, it became dried vegetables in a high school lab, I believe. And so the other thing is I really love to learn, and I bet a lot of people out there similarly like to experience new things and learn new things. And I have my parents to thank for the fact that I have a little more education than a normal person does. I went to the University of Georgia for college. I have three undergraduate degrees in journalism, speech and communications, and political science. And then, kind of because I couldn't decide what I wanted to be when I grew up, I went to law school and got a law degree. And much to my surprise, I liked it. And so that is what I considered my trained profession to be.
What were your side projects going to be if you didn't like law?
Well, so I thought for a while that I was going to go into journalism, which is something that I still like writing, and I really believe in journalism. It's something that we desperately need to keep afloat and keep alive. And so that was the last idea that I had. But along the way, at one point, I wanted to be a brain surgeon. I think I wanted to be an architect for a while. And so I didn't even know what lawyers did when I went to law school because I'm the everyone in my family is an engineer except for me. But when I figured out what they did, I decided I liked it, at least for a while. So my first job out of law school, I got to move to the wonderful city of New York City, and I had one of these international law firm fancy pants jobs where I was getting paid way too much money for having no experience in the real world. But one of the things that I noticed almost immediately was, one, New York City is an amazing place to live, especially when you're in your 20s. But something that's immediately stuck out to me is that I realized I wanted in my life that I wasn't seeing was, I wanted a more intimate connection with my immediate community. And, in a large city, it's big. The irony is that it's actually a lot smaller once you're there because everyone's on the same routines and you do get to know people. But as far as like, on a higher level of sort of being very involved in like a local system, like I realized that New York was going to be too big for that. And the one of the things that did happen when I was in New York, I had my first taste of activism. So I didn't grow up in a political family. They're Southern, and that was just something that we never talked about. But when I was in New York, one of the pro bono projects I did was help write an amicus brief for a lawsuit before the New York State Supreme Court, in which we were trying to get benefits for spouses of same-sex partnerships that worked for the state. So this was back before same-sex marriage was legalized nationally, and we were successful. And it was one of the biggest systems like that, other than California. And so it felt really good for the first time to be sort of advocating for systemic change, even though I got to do it from, my private profession. So
With that, Rachel, if I may, like doing your first amicus brief, did you have any like Twitterpation about it, just feeling like, oh my gosh, I hope this works? Or like, what was that experience like for you to embark upon that huge step in civic responsibility?
Well, just realizing that I had a skill that could be directly used to help this cause advance. And we even went to the state capitol for the day that they announced the decision. And it was, because I was had a job as a litigation attorney, which is super interesting. But as far as sort of who you're helping and the change you're making, this is the first time I had done something that was like much bigger than me, and it like literally changed until the right thing happened and it was legalized everywhere as marriage. That I got to help make things better.
Yeah.
So the recession hit in 2011. I had started working in 2008, which was a terrible time to get started. And I ended up getting laid off in 2011. And I'd been thinking about making a change anyway, but when the economy is in hard times, it's hard to walk away from a pretty good job. But the universe stepped in and did it for me, gave me a kick. So I got laid off. And so I decided that I was going to do something completely different, and that I was going to leave this New York City and go to somewhere much smaller with the goal that I was going to be intimately involved in that community. And sort of my thought process with this, it started with the local economy, which I still am a huge champion and supporter of, because this is where, we get all of the sort of creative and connected things that run our society, but also provide the things that we need So in law school, I had picked up baking as a hobby and I was pretty good at it. So my first thought when I left New York was that I was going to move to California and open a bakery. And so that is what I did. In 2012, I packed up everything and drove across the country and landed. I was aiming for Sonoma, where I now live, but I actually landed in Santa Cruz for a year. And very early on, quickly, I realized that bakery was not what I was going to do for many reasons, but I landed instead on the idea that I was going to own a food truck. Not only that, it was going to be a Southern fried chicken food truck. And so I ended up, this is Henrietta, my food truck. And it was such a beautiful way to get to know the people around me because unless you're vegan, everyone loves fried chicken. And it was such a wonderful way to provide something that made people really happy, but also to start to get to know the people around me. And it was so that was a very fun chapter. But during all of this, so I moved to Sonoma in 2013, and that's where I ended up having my truck. And so my whole point was that I wanted to get roots down in a new community where I could really get to know people as a new business owner. And one day when I grew up, maybe I'd run for office and I'd be on the city council because it was something that I thought maybe I'd be pretty good at. So little did I know that the next year, it was election year 2014, and I heard this rumor that there were going to be two people not running for re-election again, which doesn't happen very often. So I ran that year, and like everyone else, I thought I was going to lose, but people had told me that, it's a really good practice, like that usually people lose on their first round and you win on your second. And people had also told me that just the act of running for local office is an amazing way to expand your network. Like you just have this dedicated purpose to just meet as many community leaders as possible, to get to know them, to let them know who you are. So that was what I was trying to do when I first embarked. Can't remember. And so it was a very humbling experience, not having any money, not really knowing people, but just working with what I had and my tiny little table at the farmer's market. But, and then I would meet people that I just became my new friends, and I had to ask them for help, which they graciously gave me. But much to everyone's surprise, I forgot this one. And by the way, the simple act of voting for yourself on a ballot, if nothing else, just consider this being able to do that, because it's a trip to be able to do. So this article, I just wanted to read the first couple sentences. The biggest surprise in this season's race for Sonoma City Council may be the success of Rachel Hundley, a 31-year-old newcomer to both political campaigns and Sonoma itself. Hundley was Tuesday's third highest vote getter in the 8-way race, and it seems no one is more surprised than Hundley herself. And so that is how I ended up in elective office. And it has been such a beautiful experience.
So Rachel, if I may, we have about 10 minutes left with you, and I want to open it up to questions for the audience and whatnot. But I think this might be a good moment to move into, just talking about your political career, if we may.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So I can remember your election vividly, helping you with it, doing the campaign calls and whatnot. And it was so fascinating because it's the first time the city of Sonoma really had, someone your age run for public office. And now you are not the only person of our generation, basically, that is representing the city of Sonoma, which is pretty phenomenal. And from a local's perspective, and if you wouldn't mind unsharing your screen for one second.
Let's see.
Thank you, Rachel. Excellent. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and reach out into the alternate verses here. And let's see, why don't we go ahead and we can do Zoom first. Any questions on Zoom? 1 second.
Yes, there is. Sunshine is asking, Rachel, have the 10 principles informed your government work? And if so, how?
That is a great question. They absolutely have. And so one of the, back in 2014, when I first ran, I felt like I was the only person I knew who actually cared about local politics. But to me, what was important was the decisions made at this very low level are the ones that have a huge bearing on the world around whatever small group of people this is. And so being involved now and kind of decisions we make, they touch people in their daily lives. And so there's so many opportunities to take the 10 principles and find practical ways where they connect, and just in the way that in the playa, that they help create the kind of world that we want to have there, that there are certainly, in these very sort of tangible, sometimes boring decisions that you might make, but at the end of the day, it really affects the way that, people live their lives.
Excellent. Thank you, Rachel. Let's go ahead and head over to YouTube. Do we have any questions with our YouTube viewers?
We actually have another one from Zoom. John Paul is asking, what was your biggest surprise after sitting on the city council?
The biggest surprise, on the good side of it was just the effect that it had on the way that I felt like I connected with where I lived. It suddenly became, when you're in a small town and people just get to know you a lot, but it's just the feeling of being just so plugged in with where you are, rather than just sitting as a participant and watching it. It's sort of like being in the middle of it. But it's, we've had a lot of interesting experiences along the way. And one of the most difficult experiences I had was when I was mayor in 2011, and we had catastrophic wildfires in Sonoma County. And so the last thing I was expecting was to be, and this was the first year that we had wildfires of that size, and it was really scary. Mm-hmm. And I was shocked to realize that I felt like I was personally responsible for everybody. And it was, people really came together through that experience. And it was a total trip afterwards, thinking back about it. It's like, I never would have thought that I would be that person during that time. I ended up on the BBC World News many times because of it. It was just like, how did this happen? But it's a lot of experiences.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing too with that experience. I mean, because when you think about civic responsibility, especially in the capacity as a city council person, obviously you're thinking of the well-being of everyone, but most of it is policy and hearing what people bring to the city council. But I think with those fires, it's like you were literally becoming the mother of everyone. It's like, okay, everyone, let's get out safely, orderly. Let's save ourselves. So I mean, that's taking it to a completely new level.
Definitely. I mean, people were scared and people had to leave, and then no one really knew what was happening back at home. But I was here. But it was just there's so many ways of daily life that when you're in a city council, suddenly it becomes far more relevant how you participate with it.
Great. All right. Looks like we have a question from BRCVR. Looks like we have a question from Redbird. There's a bit of a delay. All right. Are we still waiting on Redbird from BRCVR? Just waiting here for my producers to talk in my earpiece.
I think we're good to keep going.
All right, excellent, thank you. Let's see, we haven't hit Facebook yet. Any questions from Facebook? Okay, any questions on Facebook? I'm not seeing any come through. I think we have some more questions on Zoom though.
I think we're having some technical problems.
Okay, excellent. So,
we should keep moving.
All right, so we got
one question about being related to being a burner. Were there any backlash from conservatives? And I'm wondering if I could usurp the next question and answer that one, because when I was managing the Spanky's Wine Bar, it was common for us to everyone that I camped with, they also felt that it needed to be like this very tightly kept secret. Like, as I after I first got elected and then I became really well known, it was just like, when people find out about this, like they're not going to understand it. And Spanky's Wine Bar, if you're not familiar with it, it's a lighthearted approach, but a BDSM themed wine bar. And so during my 2018 re-election, the moment came. I thought it was going to come when I was seeking higher office, but somebody used that to first try to scare me out of running again. And they built this nasty website about me. It was all about how I was too unethical and too depraved to be the leader of my city. And it was, and they used a lot of the photos of me from Burning Man to try to get attention for this site. So that was when the question finally came up about, is this going to have a negative impact on it? And I can affirmatively say that it was the exact opposite. My response had been, I'd recorded this little video and posted it to YouTube about slut shaming and how there was no room for that in politics anymore. And it ended up going viral. And so I ended up taking a turn and being all over. If you Google my name, you can read the articles. But I even made the Daily Mail. It was everywhere, and USA Today and Fox News. And I think that today that people are looking for people who they're more real, and people really appreciated it. And so I think that had it happened maybe 5 years earlier, I think there would have been a different response to it. But today, I think that being more individual and sort of embracing yourself, I think that people are desperate to see that.
I would agree with that, definitely. I mean, to see that realism, especially nowadays, I think to see that personality come through with the people that are representing them, I think is hugely important. All right. Any other questions before we let Rachel go?
I have one more really interesting question that also came in through, which might be related to what she was just saying. But Rachel, this is from Sunshine again. Did you find any particular challenges from conservatives due to being a burner?
So these days, now that I'm out, Burning Man wise to the public, it has been a very positive experience for me. And granted, I do live in Northern California, so I think that people are a little more used to the idea. But the messages that I had received, back in the 2018 experience, they were from people from all over the country. And one of the ones I remember the most are about for people that were like my parents' age, that were just talking about if their kids had run or their daughters had run. And, this was in southern states, just like my family. And people were just really supportive of it. So I think that, people are desperate for authenticity. And that the benefit that you out there, that I would like to implore on you, is that whatever like model you think you need to have to do this, all you need to do is be able to make good decisions. And that is based on the facts in front of you. You have to be able to dream of a better world and like be creative in that capacity. And then you just have to be yourself. And at the end of the day, running for office, it's just you do all you can do to tell people who you are, and then they get to decide if it's you or not. And if it's no, then that's fine. But if it's yes, then you can pick up what I've been doing and then just carry it further.
That's excellent. Yeah, I mean, and that's the fun part about it, is not knowing where it's going to take you, what you're going to encounter in the process completely. So it looks like do we have time for one more question, producers, or shall I move forward here?
Yes, Ryan, there is one from BRCVR. If you can look in the script, we just need you to read the intro as written. Thank you.
Okay, absolutely. And now we'll take a question from VRCVR. There'll be a slight delay before we can hear them, and you might hear my question echo. So go ahead from VRCVR.
Definitely. And one of the, I'm glad that you asked that, because so you could run for office. That's kind of, the most formal way to kind of get into the government system. But as a very foundational level, one thing that everyone can do to be more civically responsible is to just start paying closer attention to what's happening on the very low level around you. It's only my experience is only certain types of people find their local government interesting enough to follow. A lot of people feel very cynical because, local government's very, there's a wide range of how functional it is, and it's not always functional. So it's easy to be cynical about it. But the very first step is that people just need to realize that from the very lowest level, if we're going to have any hope for improving the highest levels of office in our country, you have to start at this local level and just start paying attention. So the first step is to just be informed. The second is to pick an issue that's important to you and then physically show up and advocate for your issue. And by that, you are now being a part of the process. And the fact is, like, there's not always a lot of people talking about important things. And so the people who do show up, people listen to them. And then the third is, if you don't want to run for office, there's still small ways like commissions, like our chair, our host today, he's been on a regional commission in our area and has done a great job being a part of it. But there's other volunteer ways to be involved. And like all of these little things, they are impacting the world around us, even if they don't seem like they're super sexy. And then sort of the next level is not only maybe you think about running, whoever you are, but especially with women, an effective thing is to ask people to run. And if you know someone who is very smart that you think that would be good at this, like literally ask them if they will consider doing this, and then support them along the way. So it doesn't have to be you, but if all of us like found somebody that we believed in and we like helped them, I think we'd have a little better representation.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for this great discussion. We really appreciate you being here today, and what a beautiful note to end your interview on. And let us all use the ASL sign language for applause and give Rachel a round of applause. Thank you so much, Rachel, for taking the time out of your afternoon to join us here.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you all for hosting this, and I'm excited to keep watching.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so thank you again. And as we get ready to welcome our second guest, a reminder that Accelerant is a fundraiser in support of the Burning Man Project. Burning Man is a 501c3 charitable organization. Accelerant is an independent event that is not organized or sponsored by the Burning Man Project. Please consider making a donation of any size. We are dropping the link in your chat windows now. All right, and there it is. All right, so now I'd like to bring in our second guest, Arthur Mamou-Mani. Arthur is a world-renowned architect, and most Berners will know him as the designer and architect of the most astonishing Temple Galaxia in 2018. So
Hello.
Arthur, welcome. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you so much. Yeah,
or this evening, I guess.
Yeah, it's true. It is evening in London, yeah.
Yes, excellent. All right, so everyone say hello to Arthur. And Arthur, I hear you have a stunning presentation to give us, and looking at our topic today, which is what is civic responsibility. Remember, everyone, as Arthur is presenting, if you have questions, just go ahead and drop them in the chat window. So Arthur, please go ahead and take it away.
Fantastic. Can you guys all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
That's fantastic. Well, I'm so happy to be here, and you know, the Burning Man community means so much to me, and I feel so connected to the values of Burning Man. And I don't think people outside of the community realizes that there are such strong values around Burning Man. I put them here in English and French because I'm French, although I live in London. I do connect with these ideas of radical self-reliance and the idea that we're all in charge of our destiny. And that's something that I've really learned over the years that I've been going to Burning Man. But today is about civic responsibility. And I saw this picture of Larry Harvey saying that he elevated passions into duties. And that's really how I feel about what happened, because sometimes it's hard for me to fully comprehend what happened when building such a large project like Galaxia, because it was such an adventure, such a collective adventure with so many people. And so it's one of those adventures that takes so long to fully make sense of, to connect the dots. And it's through little things, you know, often we see these big pictures of a beautiful structure and so on, but one doesn't realize that behind there's about 140 people that built it over a week, that everyone had to do menial things like dishwashing, being part of a whole of a community, making this happen. It was all across the world, really. We had 2 sites, one in Reno, one in San Francisco. We had tests being done in London. And another thing that people might not realize is that when you do a project of this size, you have to fundraise, you have to build up a team from scratch. You have to connect people that don't usually work together and make them work together, which is a really fantastic lesson in listening, in being humble, in trying to show potential of a project rather than just assume that people are hired or paid to do something. And so that is really a humbling thing. This is my studio in London. The values of Burning Man are inspiring me on a daily basis as an architect, as a teacher as well. We have gigantic 3D printers and machines that have really changed architecture in general. This is the studio downstairs. What this revolution of 3D printing and digital fabrication brought is that during the COVID crisis, for example, we could provide the masks for the PPEs for the hospitals, which kept us going, which was really a wonderful aspect of decentralizing the fabrication, the means of production, which is something new that's happening in architecture. I've learned this throughout the years, and Burning Man, I started going there with my students. These are all student projects that we mentored with my co-teacher, Toby. And so you can see a few of the project. I'll come back into some of the lessons I've learned with the students. But this is the first time, for example, that I went on my own, let's say, with a design that I made. This was Tangential Dreams, where people could write their dreams on the structure, which slowly led to Galaxia and the idea that people could participate. Now, this notion of civic responsibility in architecture, let's say, this is a project that is meant to be a skyscraper that can disassemble itself, assemble and disassemble itself. Often we build structures for a world that we think is infinite, really. We build giant skyscraper when the economy is right, and when it's not right anymore, we just leave them empty. And so something I've learned with Burning Man is that time can be a factor that informs design. And so this robot that we invented was here to merge 3D printing with large-scale assembly and disassembly. which is really one of those leave no trace moments that came all the way from Burning Man. And this continue onwards, and I'll show you the project if we have some time that we were planning to do last Burning Man. We're hoping to do it this year, as well as a project that we wanted to do in the Silicon Valley, which is a tower with a restaurant that serves the food that grows in the tower itself. And so this is another notion of locality, like local. It was so great to hear Rachel talk about the new movements in the civic society, the idea that we are aware of distance, so not just time, but distance. And, you know, I saw Rachel talking about her background. These are my parents. They're obviously hippies. One is Jewish Tunisian, and one is Catholic French. And here they are. They came together around common values, the idea of going beyond profit, or how to reconcile Woodstock and Wall Street, the values of the hippies and the values of the, let's say, the capitalist. And my dad always, told me that one is not opposite to the other. It depends on your personal ethics, and you have to reach out to these individual ethics, which is this civic responsibility, but also the notion that you are in charge, that you don't blame the system all the time, but that you actually make a system of your own that can help. So I graduated during the 2008 crisis, and really I couldn't find jobs after I graduated. And so having all these ideas of digital fabrication, of democratization of the means of production, I thought, well, what can we do? And so I accessed smaller things. This is, for example, a window display that we did using the computation. This is called parametric design. I don't know if you're aware of this new movement inside design that pushes us to link the computers and the computational power to the materials, the science of materials. So these are ideas of how to use materials and computers and lasers and 3D printers to create a holistic architecture. So to bring you into the Galaxia world, let's just say, this was one of the first larger projects that I had, which was for Virgin Galactic. It was a hotel for the astronauts before they go to space, which is kind of funny because basically what this is a structure that grows given the environment. You can see the different versions that can happen when you let architecture grow from the bottom up. The idea that architecture doesn't have to be imposed from the top down, but could emerge from parameters is the very notion of parametric design. So this was a really interesting project in the shape of a Galaxia, of course, of our galactic system, but it also was an environmental project because it used thermal mass or things like understanding the solar radiation and only letting the sun in when it's cold and diffusing it when it's hot. Another thing that I was kind of interested in and happened throughout the whole kind of path that I had was 3D printing. And the idea that you could send not just the projects, the modules, the things you're making, but the machine that makes them. And so this idea of being local can also be informed by the machines that you use. And so that was a big kind of thing in my brain, that we could print something local that is actually made from codes that are sent globally. And another thing of these machines that I realized kind of afterwards was that we were using something called bioplastic. And so that's another point of this civic responsibility, is understanding the materials that you use, where they come from, where they're going, the entire life cycle. So this is called a life cycle analysis. It's the way to understand throughout the multi-dimensions why a material is better than another. There's no clear, easy answers to the question of carbon and the environment. You can see all the criteria that one can use to prove that a material is better than another one. So this is PLA, bioplastic, versus petroleum-based plastic. And essentially, it all comes down to using sustainable materials that are renewable, that can grow again, that come from the earth and go back to the earth, which is what this idea of cradle to cradle is all about. And so, I saw questions to Rachel about how does she use the values of Burning Man to go back to, let's say, the default world, the non-Burning Man world, and to create things that are inspired by it. So this was a project with COS, the fashion company. that are owned by H&M. And when I met them, this is the creative director, of course, they said, well, you know, we want to work with you. We like the spirit somehow. But what can you do? And I said to them, well, you guys deal with fast fashion. And obviously there's a problem with fast fashion, and people think that they can buy and throw and don't understand the notion of where things come and where things go. And so we developed this bio brick, a brick made from this PLA, made from fermented sugar. And it was so thin, this module, that it had the same structural capacity as foam. And the reason being is that all of it was maximizing tension rather than compression. It was also being built locally across the different fabrication space around the site in Milan. And that's a very important notion of civic responsibility, is knowing how do you deal with, although we are in a global world, how do you deal with local materials, local fabrication facilities? How do you keep the people that are there and the economy healthy there? And so, for example, on the right, you have a project we did in Saudi Arabia, in another desert, which was based on 3D printing with sand. And so you see those modules from the COST project growing up and dealing with the nature and the palm trees that we have here, but also dealing with the desert. And we wanted to 3D print with sand, using sand as the material and binding it with a bioresin so that we would be able to use a very local material and create an efficient structure that was inspired and driven by natural systems. And so this is the project that we did called the Sand Wave, which was then also modular and therefore could be disassembled.
Arthur, this is amazing, and I'm getting questions from all over the place. So I'm wondering, considering we have 10 minutes left, I'm wondering if I can politely interrupt your presentation to get to people's questions.
Of course.
Excellent. All right, and if you wouldn't mind unsharing your screen,
of course,
for us, thank you. All right, so we're going to open up discussion across all the platforms. If you have a question for Arthur, please be sure to leave it in your platform's chat window. I know some of you have already. If you're in BRC-VR, you can raise your hand emoji. So I know there's a question in BRC-VR. So what I'm going to do, there will be a slight delay before we can hear them, and you might hear my question in echo. So let's go ahead and go to BRC-VR. There'll be a slight delay. Excellent question, Keith. Thank you.
Wow, that is a really great question, and it's not an easy answer because it's more of a journey than a sort of strict rule. Often, you know, I've been criticized for using a material that is not perfect, and people attack the points that are actually the weaknesses of that material. For example, take PLA bioplastic. Because we don't have enough composting facility, people say, oh, it's worse than normal petroleum-based plastic because at least the other one is easy. We know what to do with it. And so the truth is, by actually studying the science behind it, by really understanding the different axes of advantages and disadvantages, is when you can really convince. So for example, you've seen the life cycle analysis that I showed you. It had benefits over you know, things like toxicity. When you burn plastic, a lot of plastics are being burned after being recycled. You can recycle so much plastic before it loses all properties. And PLA is about 60% less toxic than the normal plastic. It also comes from a material that grows from the earth, and therefore you can link it with things like vertical gardens. That means that you can actually vertical farming, you can grow the plastic yourself, and all the way at the end, you can compost it. So you can put it in a composting facilities that, but you see the thing is, because it requires us to think of the growth of the materials that we, of the crops that we use, and all the way to what kind of composting facility we're using. There's such a big stretch in the level of knowledge. And then there is all the regulations, for example, fire regulations, where we have to come up with new fire retardant for it, because it's such a new material that, you know, it doesn't yet meet all the criteria of fire regulation. So there's so many different axes of how to actually convince people that this could be a solution, that is a very hard questions to answer, and hence a process.
Well, I mean, you're just pointing to all the layers. I mean, that is just mind blowing. Yeah, you were taking civic responsibility and extrapolating it to a huge level. You know, not just in the viability of your designs, but how how the population interacts with them, and how it can push our responsibility in building things forward. It's really fascinating to me. And we have a few minutes left, sadly, but I have a question here from Facebook. Gustav from Facebook asks, how can we as consumers influence architecture to promote leave no trace and environmental responsibility?
That's a fantastic question, Gustav. I'm doing my home at the moment, and I'm amazed by the lack of let's say, holisticness around the materials that we have access to. And I say this because I'm the first one that should be critical, but then I struggle sometimes because I can't have access to the data. So for example, we were looking at flooring, and we were like, oh, there's this bamboo flooring. That's probably the best there is, because bamboo grows faster than any wood out there. And then I realized that the binder is epoxy, which is a petroleum-based resin, which is absolutely super toxic. And I called the bamboo companies. I'm like, wait a second, you're promoting sustainability, and yet you're using a petroleum-based resin. What's the logic? And they were like, oh yeah, almost like you got me there. And I think like we should have a certain curiosity as consumers, not just as designers or architects and so on, but just as people that buy things, to really dig into. And to be honest, it's something that's almost becoming a passion. You know, when I showed the elevating passion to duty, it's both, because I'm so interested in understanding what's the benefit of using, for example, this bamboo flooring, even though it's got epoxy. Is that still worse than using, for example, a reclaimed wood that comes from reusing the wood? Is that better than cutting an oak tree? Is that better than you see what I mean? It's an...
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if Arthur froze on everyone's screen. Oh, sorry, Arthur, I think you might have froze on my screen there for a minute. So I apologize, I didn't hear the last things you said there, but we do sadly have to wrap up our interview, although we could chat with you for another 2 hours, I'm sure.
So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. And sorry if we didn't get to everyone's questions, but thank you everyone for asking questions of both of our guests today. And this first hour always just goes by so unbelievably quickly. But thank you, Arthur, so much for taking the time out to be with us this afternoon.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah. And I'd also like to thank our ASL interpreter, Zofia Lewandowski. And before we get to our second hour of music and dancing, I just wanted to give a few thanks to people who made Accelerant possible. A huge shout out to all of my beloved campmates at Celestial Bodies who have continually supported us in this Accelerant project. Thank you to Andrew Barrett and Lance Osman for conceiving and producing this event. Thank you to Dan Benge, Dan the man, as I am now naming him, who engineered the tech solution that has enabled radical inclusion across multiple platforms. and all of our campmates, Gustav, Keith, Ken, Steve, Kat, and newcomer Sarah for all the meetings and the tech support. And believe me, there's a lot. Once again, we are doing this as a fundraiser for the Burning Man Project. We're going to drop the link in one last time into the chat window on your platforms. Please help us ensure that we can all get back to the playa in 2021 or whenever it is safe for us to do so. I could only imagine this on the playa. That would be the most amazing thing. Okay, so are you ready for part 2? We will be showcasing everyone dancing in BRCVR, in Multiverse, and all of you on Zoom. So please don't touch your screens because Dan, the man, will handle all of that for you. Just get up on your feet and welcome DJ N all the way from Brisbane, Australia. And let's dance. Thank you, everyone, for another great Accelerant, and we look forward to doing this again soon.
But I'm frozen in motion and my head tells me to stop, tells me to stop. Feelings I feel about us. Try to fight it, but it's never enough. My heart is hurting, it's more than a crush. Cause I'm frozen in motion and my head tells me to stop.
I follow it on Instagram. Yeah. This is Kirsten. Yeah. And I got
the special times are running through my mind. Baby, I need you. Your love makes me shine, but I just might cry tonight. I need you, but what would we do?
can't hide. You can't hide from yourself. Everywhere you go, there you are. You can't hide from yourself. Everywhere you go, there you are.
what you have and what you love. What you have and what you love. Thunder only happens when it's raining. Players only love you when they're playing. Women, they will come and they will go. When the rain washes you clean, you'll know. You'll know.
But the basis of it all is this. You've got to let it go.
You will
Let it happen. You don't have control. That which happens of itself. You breathe. Your heart beats by itself. Life is fun.
Now here I go again. I see the crystal vision. I keep my visions to myself. It's only me who wants to wrap around your dreams and have you in the dreams you love yourself. Dreams of loneliness like a heartbeat drives you back in the stillness of the memory of what you had and what you love, what you had, what you love, what you had and what you love. Thunder only happens when it's raining. Players only love you when they're playing. Women, they will come and they will go. When the rain washes you clean, you'll know. Oh, thunder only happens when it's raining. Players only love you when they're playing. Say women, they will come and they will go. When the rain washes you clean, you'll know. You'll know. You will know. Oh, you'll know. You'll know. You will know. Oh, you'll know. You will know. You